Hey, Cleaning Nation, Mike Campion here with the amazing Lindsay Bjorklund. Today, we are going to talk about why cleaning company owners chase revenue and really kind of forget profit. We're going to answer, today's an AMA, but a lot of questions around pay and how do we pay. And the underlying theme I want you guys and gals to get is probably 80% of the folks I talk to before they kind of come into our program, their big goal, it's always revenue, right? It's always revenue. And the funny thing is, and they know their revenue and they know where they want to be in revenue. It's always double or triple or $1 million a year. They've got these big revenue goals. But when I ask them profit, they kind of like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And it's like, the reality is you don't want $1 million company. $1 million company, frankly, is just a big headache. What you want is what I see most of you guys and gals assuming is, oh, if I had $1 million company, then I'd be financially free. Then I'd be rich. But like 18,000 companies go bankrupt a year. And I'm guessing 30% of those are over $1 million. So we kind of, we assume like we gotta, and there's $1 billion companies that go bankrupt. So we think revenue equals freedom. It really doesn't. Revenue's a trap. It's work, right? And revenue means you owe people things, you need employees and systems and risks because money's coming in and you've got payables. So there's nothing wrong with revenue, but it is a means to an end, guy, gal. The only end in itself for revenue is ego, right? So if you just want to feed the ego, there is something about, if we're honest, I have never gone to a dinner party, like, just so you know, my business is several seven-figure, and maybe we're in a networking group or like a business mentor, and then there, you can kind of whip that out and feel like, a big shot. But oftentimes, if you're in the big shot, you're in the wrong room. You just need to get in a bigger room. And it doesn't matter what your revenue is, you be in the room where you don't feel like a big shot. So even then, you can't pull out the ego, because just even now, if you're like, well, that seems dumb, like, then just find a room where people have smaller revenue. And you'll feel like the ego is really just switching rooms. It has nothing to do with inherent. So just want to encourage you, revenue's for the ego, but people don't want. You think you want revenue, you focus on revenue, but you want freedom. And you kind of just do this, if I had $1 million business, or if I had whatever the case is, double my business, really whatever your thing is, then I'd be rich and famous. But the cool thing about our program is we've got guys doing, 10 grand a month. We've got guys doing 110, or gals doing 110 grand a month. And the 10 grand guys all think they'll be happy when they get to 50. And we have the 50 guys and they're happy. Nope. They don't even think about the 50. They just want to be the 100, which is cool because we've got 100 grand guys and they're happy, right? Nope. It goes on and on. So the reality is we really want to make sure that you focus on profit first. Like a lot of times when I ask people what their profit is, they're like, oh, 30%, 40%. Everybody makes 30 or 40%. And I go, cool. How much did you take home last month? And they go, oh, well, I'm reinvesting, or, my accountant handles that, or they got a bunch of answers. And it's typically nothing, or I've got a $3,000 salary, but you said 30% of your 30 grand is 9 grand. Where's that? Well, I got a and it's just a bunch of stuff. So if you're that guy or gal and you're like, my profit's 30%, until you take it out or do something with it, or if, again, or I'll go, great. So you've got, say they said they're taking 30%, we do the math and that's 10 grand a month. And I'm like, cool, you haven't taken any out. So you've got 30 grand more in your bank account business than you did 3 months ago. Well, no, and there's it always starts with a well, right? So if someone asks you about your profit, your answer is not a number, it's well, we might want to think again. So just want to encourage everyone, we're going to hit these questions, but the goal is, again, if you want to stroke your ego, you think revenue will do it, really picking the room of people that you're speaking to. Just hang out with poor people, your ego will feel better. You're like, well, that's not good for me financially. It's like, no, hang out with the richer people. So even the more revenue you have, it's still not going to fix your ego, right? Because in most rooms, you're not going to talk about your revenue anyway, right? Or if you do, and it's not like some sort of business thing, you're not going to be invited to a ton of parties is my guess. So if it's just for the ego, and the ego really gets modified by who you're hanging out with, and you want to hang out with people more successful than you anyway, tack with the revenue. It's just about profit, right? I've had $1 million companies that made $500,000 in profit, and I promise you, day to day, they feel a lot better than the $3 million companies making $400,000 in profit, or even the same profit with more revenue. It's a lot more risk and it's a lot more headache. So I can't encourage you enough. Revenue's for the ego, profits for freedom. So if you want to feed your ego, go get revenue. Probably won't even work. If you want to feed your ego, really just hang out with poor people or people poorer than you. If you want to get freedom, financially and time-wise. Now let's get some profit, because revenue is the opposite of freedom. It's a pain in the neck. Profit is what gives you freedom, because then you can hire people, you can do what you want, you can say no to things. All sorts of cool stuff happens with profit. Revenue is just a pain in the neck. All right, I am so sorry, Lindsay. You did not sign up for this rant, but it's happened. This is history. There's no one doing it. Any questions, or any feedback I want to send, or do you want to go right into questions we got?
We'll just cut it there. That was
gun.
All right. No, I love a good opening rants. That was awesome. All right. So with all that being said, with that foundation laid, let's go into the questions. All right. Someone in the Facebook group said, how do you pay yourself? Do you have a fixed monthly salary, or do you take a percentage out of the monthly sales?
Gosh, I love that question, because that's focused on profit, right? And that's why I kind of wanted to pre-set this up with. The first thing is 90% of the questions are about revenue, how to grow more customers, sometimes about hiring so they get more customers or pricing. But rarely is it a thoughtful question like, hey, if I'm doing 10 grand or 50 grand, 100 grand a month, what should I be taking? How do I take it? Like, let's talk through that. So the question is, how do I pay myself? But I'll answer. It's really, we just take a fixed salary and transition money over. But that is for the business I've had different businesses. I don't know if that's wildly helpful for you. So I wanted to answer because you asked, but let me give, now that I've answered the actual question, let me get an answer I think will be more helpful for you guys as owners and gals as owners of cleaning companies. So there's a couple pieces to this. There's what you need to live, which is important. There's how to mitigate your tax situation, which is important. And there's what your company can afford. All these are super important, right? So the specific question they asked is, you take a salary or percentage out. That's probably as much of a tax question as anything, which wouldn't be my expertise to answer on. Even if I was, a good tax person is never going to answer that for everybody, because that's an insane, it makes no sense. So I'm not a tax expert, but I know enough to go, how much do you make? What are your assets? What are your liabilities? What's your tax situation? What kind of corporate structure do you have? How many there's just a lot of questions I'd have to ask to be able to answer that effectively. But the concept most tax experts are going to give you, which was a good concept. And by the way, guys, gals, I'm always under their impression of I think it is an American, can't speak for all you Canadians out there, whoever, it is our duty as a citizen to pay the least amount of taxes we legally can, right? Like, you get a lot of politicians going, they're taking advantage of all these tax loopholes. And usually the politicians accusing the other politicians of that are the ones that wrote the tax loopholes and also take advantage of the tax loopholes. So it's like, it's not a loophole. They call it a loophole. It's like, it's a legal deduction. Right? So just calling it a loophole doesn't change anything, right? The government makes rules to modify your behavior, right? If they give you a legal deduction, it's because they want you to do something, right? If the fact that you can deduct your interest off of a home mortgage, but you cannot deduct your rent, is because they want people to own homes, not rent. So you are doing what the government wants you to do when you take that deduction. You're not, again, don't lie, cheat, or steal. That's called fraud. That's tax evasion. You'll go to jail. Please don't do that. But taking advantage of I hate the word loopholes, taking advantage of deductions or legal tax breaks is like, yeah, they're trying to modify your behavior. They want you to invest or do a thing. And to do so, they like tax credit for children. They want you to have kids. So anyway. So all that to say, everything I'm coming from on the tax side is we want to pay as little taxes. We want to pay our fair share. And again, we can get political and talk about what a fair share is, by the way. Like 10% of the people pay net the whole fair share. And those are the ones that everyone says don't pay the fair share. And when I say that, by the way, you're like, that doesn't matter. If you take net taxes, like taxes used versus taxes paid. So like some people pay no taxes, other people pay taxes, but they use as many services. They pay 10 grand a month in taxes, but they take $10,000 in services. So they don't really, they're not really paying anything. And then like 10% of the society pays for everything. And those are the 10% that everyone says you're not paying your fair share. So I shouldn't say fair share. You want to pay your legal requirement, of course. And if you want to tip the government, God bless you, go do it. I think you'd be better off to directly give to someone or a church or something you've got a little more influence over. But if you think the government's best with the money, you do whatever you want, boyfriend, girlfriend. Okay, enough of the tax rant. So typically your accountant is going to, your CPA, because your accountant's job is to make sure you have accurate data. Your CPA, Certified Public Accountant in the United States, CA in Canada, their job is to file your taxes and tell you how much you owe. There's a great video my wife showed me on Instagram where it's a guy going, how much are my taxes? The government's like, you have to figure that out. Like, how would I know how much to pay? Like, you figured that out. You're like, what if I make a mistake? Like, we'll throw you in jail. He's like, well, how do you know how it is? He's like, we know. He goes, well, then why don't you just tell me? He's like, you have to figure that out. Just an insane thing. If you think about our tax system, it really is silly. And I'm sure all tax systems are not beating up on America, but weird how the government's like, you tell us how much you owe, but if you get it wrong, we'll throw you in jail. It's like, why don't you just tell me how much it is? Like, we don't do that. It's your job. It's like, good Lord. So the whole concept of paying a guy or a gal to figure out how much you owe in taxes is ridiculous. Sorry, CPAs. You guys perform a great task, but the government, it shouldn't be that difficult. You got to pay a guy, right? Or a company or a team of people, depending on how much money you earn, just to, figure out how much you owe the government, which is nutball. Okay. So all that to say, they're typically going to have you take as small of a salary as possible because salary is the highest tax thing, right? So if I take a salary, I got to pay Social Security, I got to pay, and I get it's a little different in Canada, but the concept of you just pay the most taxes on salary, it's the least place you can protect your money from taxes. So most people go, well, I'll just take all of my money as a draw or some sort of, where an officer loan or distribution. There's lots of ways you can take money from your company that are not salary. And as business owners who don't want to pay any more taxes than we owe, we want to take as much draws or distributions or salaries. But there becomes a thing where the government's not dumb. If you got a $1 million company making $300,000-$400,000 in profit, and you're like, yeah, I take a salary of 38 grand. That ain't going to fly, right? So your CPA should say, you need a salary. And again, I'm making up this number. They'll tell you in your circumstance, you need to take at least 100 grand. So if and when you get audited, we can both say this is a reasonable salary for the guy to take. So typically when you're like, how much should be salary versus draw or distribution or whatever the case may be, the real answer is talk to your CPA. You want to take the least amount of salary you can, but you want to, and again, that's the problem with the government. It's like, well, your CPA is not going to tell you, oh, here's your thing. Here's a calculation. You have to take $5,203 every month. They'll make their best guess. And you'll be like, oh, I think I'd like it a little, you guys will wrangle out what's, super risky and not very risky. And then if you get audited, you got to fight with that guy. So it's frustrating because there's really you and your CPA are just making your best guess, which is a little weird, but that's what you do. Again, the lower you go, the more taxes you save today, the more risk in an audit. The higher you go in salary, the more taxes you pay today, and the lower risk you have in an audit of getting dinged on that thing. Not that you won't get dinged on something else, but you'll be safe there. So to answer your question, random Facebook human, it's really not the overall kind of philosophy would be take as little as you can in salary that a CPA that you trust signs off on and says, yes, this is an appropriate amount for you. And what I'd like to see is consistent draw. So you don't want a lot of like, oh, this month I was rich and I took out $5 grand and draw on top of my salary. And this month I couldn't even make payroll. And that means you're probably taking too much out. So I'd rather be consistent at $2 grand a month on draw. Or again, it could be whatever the number is on your company size. Then some months it's 5 and some months it's -2, right? Like I have to put money back in or borrow. Last thing I'll say is you really want to know what your goals when it comes to profit, because a lot of times people or owners think they're unprofitable, but the reality is their business isn't big enough. So we coach to a 30% profit. A lot of the people that come in are making 0 to 20%. And that's without cleaning, right? If you're cleaning physically, that's not a profit. That's a paycheck, right? Like you would get paid for that just like anyone else. So the profit is what you get paid for owning the business, not for physically cleaning stuff. So typically we coach to a 30% profit without the owner having to clean it all and, maybe work 10, 20 hours a week. If you're working 50, 60 hours a week, again, part of that's a paycheck, right? You'd have to get paid for that 50 or 60 hours. And then everything above that you received would be a profit.
Mike Campion here. Do you ever listen to the podcast and go, this is great information, I just wish I could actually get it implemented and I wish I could get some help? Well, we do that. If you would like either myself or my team's help actually coming up with a plan that's specialized to you and your business, because with these podcasts, obviously we have to be very general and we can only go 20 minutes at a time. If you'd like to jump on a call with myself or my team, go to growmycleaningcompany.com/talk. We'll jump on a call. There's no charge and we'll help you get some absolute clarity around exactly what to do next and how to do it. The reason we don't charge for these calls is the plan that we come up with, people want help implementing that. If that's the case, we're happy to talk about it. And if it's not, that's okay too. We're happy to just help you come up with a plan. So if you want to translate the information you're learning here into an actual plan that can change your life, give us a ring, growmycleaningcompany.com/talk. Love to either myself or have one of our coaches walk you through and actually personalize the content you get here to where you're at with your business. Talk soon.
So all that to say, if your business, say you need $5,000 a month to live and your business is only producing $3,000 a month. You could be like, this thing's not profitable. Well, if the business is doing 10 grand in revenue and you're not cleaning, you're taking $3,000 out. Well, that's a very profitable business. It's not the business's fault. You can't squeeze, blood out of a turnip. There ain't nothing there. You just need a bigger business to be able to accommodate your needs. So either you lower your expenses, get a second source of income, or grow your business. But to say, I'm just going to try and make it more profitable, that's no good. The other side is, which is much more common, someone's got maybe $1 million business and they're only making $100,000. And they think, man, if I make 200,000, I got to double to 2 million. It's really not the case. You can modify, optimize your pricing, optimize how you pay your people, look at your overhead. There's levers you can pull right now. And a lot of clients that come in with us doing 50, 60 grand or more a month, we help them double their profit without sometimes they shrink their company and still make more money, right? Because again, if you're making 10% off $1 million, that's 100 grand. Say you get the thing down to 600, you let go of a bunch of unprofitable, and this is rare, but say we get extreme, but you're making 30%, you're still making 180. And again, the ego takes a hit. Oh, I was $1 million. Now I'm only doing 60. Blah, blah, blah. But you start cashing, $20,000 of checks every month. The ego feels a lot better real goddamn quick. So just make sure when you're looking, you should be about, again, 30% is kind of best in class. So if you're at 20, 25, there's definitely some opportunity there, but you can give yourself a pass or not, depending on where your focus is. If you're under 20%, again, this is without cleaning. If you're not cleaning, that money doesn't count. Whatever you would get paid to clean, that's a job. If you're under 20% without paycheck, I would only focus on increasing the profit. If you're at 30, I wouldn't even focus on increasing the profit. Let's just get more revenue. Okay, that was a real long answer to a real short question, but I think we still got time for more.
All right, Mike. Sandra in the Facebook group, she's in the short-term rental industry. She asked, she said, I'm growing really big. I'm hiring my first staff in business over 10 years. I'm really thinking about hiring contractors instead of employees. What are your thoughts on this?
So love the question, Sandra, but I want to encourage, again, this would be a perfect example of where the rant we started with is, I think that might be the wrong question. So I hate, and again, I'm not picking on you, Sandra. Love you, girl. Thank you for the question. I hate statements like I'm growing really big. I don't know what that means. A lot of people look at my business and go, that's a really big business. A lot of business owners will look at my business and go, this guy's barely even doing anything, right? So really big, like $1 billion a year, $100 million a year, $1 million a year. And a lot of times we're like, well, I just hit $20,000 a month. It's like, okay, well, let's, instead of really big, you don't have to share revenue, on a podcast, although it's just first name. So you'd be okay. Let's just go with the revenue. Second, what's the profit? Because again, really big doesn't, if the goal is just ego. So again, yeah, when we talk about like contractors versus employees, like, I don't know what the goal is. I don't know what the profit is. Like, there's not enough context to know what's your goal and because really, so for those of you that are fans of the podcast and listen for a while, we typically recommend W-2 employees in the States or employees versus contractors. And there's a lot of reasons why we've done that in lots of podcasts. I'm not going to kind of dive into that one because today we're talking about revenue for ego, profit for freedom. And again, if you really look at the goal of the, so really, I hate to do this as a coach, but I'm going to, because we've answered that question several times on other podcasts. Lindsay, if you can, maybe link to a podcast where we like really get into the difference between W-2 versus contractors. To stay on theme here, but still tag on to Sandra's question, I would respond with a question. When you say really big, what does that mean? So, and this would be obviously a one-on-one question or conversation, 20 grand a month. Cool. Is your goal to have a certain revenue? So if I said, what's your goal, Sandra or anyone's just going to be like some revenue goal. Cool. And is your goal to have a certain amount of revenue or a certain amount of profit? And they always stop, think, and go, well, I guess it's profit. Cool. So we started with the revenue, but that's not really your goal. Your goal is profit. So what's your profit goal? And then once we get there, then we can start reverse engineering and figure out if she's at the 1099s, wants to go to W-2s, when would that make sense? Is that even something we need to be worried about, right? 9 times out of 10, you're not hitting your profit goal, not because, again, a lot of people, here's the 3 things everyone thinks, if I just do this, then I'll hit my goal, but they haven't specified their goal. And if we're talking and I kind of force them to specify their goal and it's a profit goal, you see how ridiculous these 3 things are. But these are the 3 things most people think they need when they come to me before I tie them down on their profit goal. I'm 1099 and I got to go to W-2, or I'm W-2 and I'll go to 1099. That's going to fix everything. But I don't even know what fixing everything is because I don't know what's broken or what you want, right? They just got this loosey-goosey, that'll make my business grow. But again, your business growing is not the goal, right? You got into this to make a certain amount of profit, or even impact, which is fine. Impact goal is fine, but revenue is rarely the real goal. It's a stand-in, right? Like I might say, I just want to get married, then I'll be happy. But what I'm really saying is good, yeah, but lots of marriages end in divorce and lots of married people are not happy, right? What I really want is a deep, intimate relationship. And if like, well, if I go for that, and I'm not saying you shouldn't marry, I'm just saying marriage is not the goal. It's a perceived pathway or bridge to the goal, right? Revenue is not the goal. It's a perceived. If I just had revenue, then I'd be happy. If I was just married, I'd just be happy. No, if I just had profit, I'd be happy. And revenue is loosely correlated with profit. If I was married to the right woman and we had a really loving, deep, caring relationship, I would be happy. And generally marriage is, I'm not saying marriage isn't a part of that, but it's not the whole thing, right? So, and I could give lots of examples, but the real thing I would do with Sandra is like, what's the goal? And for all of you guys, you can play along at home. If your goal is to double or 10x or have be $1 million revenue, you don't really want that. You're like, I want freedom. Cool. How much money would this business have to pay you in profit every year for you to be free? And what's free look like to you? Is it travel? Is it put your kids to school? Is it pay off your house? Is it be debt free? There's a bunch, like your freedom may not be my freedom. So step one is really to figure out the goal before we do anything else. Like any of these, any question on salary versus this, W-2 versus 1099, if we can squeeze in a third question, we always start with what's the goal? And it should be really, and even profit isn't the goal. It's, I want to be debt free. I want to homeschool my kids. I want to work 10 hours a week and be able to pay my mortgage. I want my wife to come home and not have to work because she hates her job. Those are all super clear goals. And then you can reverse engineer that. But okay, most of them require money, right? They all require time or money. Every goal I've heard is time or money. Even impact goals, like great, they all require time and money. So then you just figure out, okay, I need a business that creates $20,000 of profit every month. And I only want to work 10 hours a week. Cool. That's a real goal. Now we can reverse engineer the business and answer questions like W-2 versus 1099, salary versus whatever, all that good stuff. So to answer your question, Sandra, step one is to figure out what's your goal. And then we can, once I have your goal, I could give you a more thoughtful answer. But just like I started, the three things people think will change their business before they are clear on their goals. One, if I go W-2 to 1099 or 1099 W-2, then I'll be rich. You won't. Two, software. If I just find the magic software, then I'll be rich. You won't, I can assure you. And there's some good software out there we like. I'm not saying software won't make your life a little better, but again, when you don't have a clear goal, you think software is going to do it. And then three, for some reason, many of you residential folks are like, if I just went commercial, that's where the money is. Yeah. About half our clients are commercial, and I promise you, they're not substantially more anything. So all three of those, I think, sound reasonable. You're just like, I want to have a bigger company. I want to take over the world. I want to franchise this thing. Like, cool, fine. Those all may be reasonable things. But when you have a real goal of profit, you're like, really? Is that going to be the thing? And by the way, if it was, everyone would be rich. If all we had to do is go 1099, guess what? Everyone, or W-2, everyone would do that and they'd all be rich. But that's not the case. If all we need is the magic software, everyone would be a billionaire except for the software company. They'd be trillionaires. But it doesn't exist. If it was just going to commercial, then who would do residential, right? If you think it through half a second, you'll get there. All right. By golly, I've been ranting too much. We're going to get 3 questions in today. Lindsay, we're making it happen, lady.
I'm afraid to ask. Okay, I'm going to ask. Brian.
Yeah, poor Lindsay. People ask questions and I yell at them and Lindsay's like, I'm here. I didn't ask the question, but you're screaming at me.
Brian said, what compensation structure has been the most beneficial for companies, your sales team? 100% commission or salary plus commission or something else?
All right. So this is going to be a very similar answer to Sandra. Really, the devil's in the details, and it depends on what your goal is and what your revenue is. And are you commercial, are you residential? There's just lots of different answers to that. So the big picture answer, and then I'm going to go right back to we got to know what your ultimate goal is. Because if I don't know what your goal is, it's like, again, if I go to the doctor and he can't see me, he doesn't know how old I am or how much I weigh, and I'm like, I'd like to be in better shape. What should I do, cardio, or should I stop drinking sugary sodas? He's like, probably both. I don't know. Like, he's like, how much do you weigh now? How old are you? What's your, if I'm 97 pounds and I'm, 12, that's a little different than I'm 82 and I'm 300 pounds. Like, they're very different answers. And what's your goal, right? The 82-year-old's goal might just be to what is going to be different than the 20-year-old's goal. I don't know what it is, but I can tell you it's going to be very different, and good feedback is going to be wildly different based on those two people. So generally on the commercial side, we don't encourage you to get salespeople, because really what people are doing is, I don't know how to market, or I don't like marketing. So I'm going to have someone else do the marketing and the sales and everything, and I'm magically just going to pay them a commission. And I'm really going to get a talented person who's going to say yes to that and saying they won't. So you pay them a salary, but then because it's such a long sales cycle, they might do nothing for a long time and then they quit. I don't want to get into what we've done in other podcasts, but commercial does not lend itself to salespeople, because a good commercial company might get 3 or 4 or 5 bids a month. And I'm not saying you can have an estimator. I'm not saying you have to do everything, but the sales piece of it just doesn't take that long. And, if each bid is $3,000 a month and they stay 5 years, this is like $200,000 bid. Like you can't spend an hour a month fiddling with this. Come on now. And on the residential side, just different. It's a little more nuanced. And again, you start with revenue, make sure cost of goods sold. We typically go 45% cost of goods sold, 25% overhead. So all of your overhead, including the salesperson, would want to be in that 25%, which means even on the residential side, salespeople typically don't make sense profitably till you're doing like $40,000 a month, maybe a little more, depending on your goals and how profitable you are. So again, same answer would be, we got to start with the end of what's the profit and what's the goal. And if the goal is just to have all the revenue in the world, but no profit, it's like, oh, pay your salespeople all the money and hire 1,000 of them, because it's like, oh, that'll generate revenue, but you may or may not, you may lose money, but by golly, you'll get your profit, or you'll get your revenue. Profit's probably gone. So big takeaway, guys, gals, focus on the profit. If this is something you can't do by yourself or struggle doing by yourself, get a coach. Can be us, can be anyone you like. So anyone that's going to help you be accountable to whatever your real goal is and help you come up with a plan. So you're not, it's so important, really. Here, I'll wrap this all up with a bow. Having been in business for 30 years and coached for a decade, aside from casting a vision and building culture, the biggest role, or the most important day-to-day role, even the casting vision and doing culture isn't as much day-to-day, of the owner, is being crystal clear on what the biggest constraint in the business is and fighting like heck to eliminate it. So I can almost guarantee for any of these 3 people, taking a salary versus a draw is not the biggest constraint in your business. Deciding to go W-2s versus contractors is not the biggest constraint in your business. And most certainly hiring a salesperson or the compensation plan for that salesperson is not the biggest constraint. The reality is, some of us don't know the biggest constraint, in which case you should get a coach or a mentor to help you know. And equally often, we know what the biggest constraint is. It's just a hard thing to solve, so we don't do it. We pick we'll fiddle with some software. I'll write a script. I'll do all the things I love, which is great, but we don't grow. So the real answer is, understand what your real goal is. It's probably tied to some sort of outcome in your lifestyle that will require money. Figure out how much money you need for your business, and then figure the one biggest constraint that's stopping you from getting that money, and work only on that and forget about all these other little questions. Big stuff, I know, but sincerely, if you want to build a multi-million-dollar company, those are kind of non-negotiables. I've never seen anyone build a company of any size or profitability or value that wasn't able to identify and attack the biggest constraint. And you just basically, that's the only thing that stops your business from growing, is I can't figure out this next constraint. Whatever it is above my thing, and you got to level up your skills to beat that constraint, or you'll continue being at that level you're at, whether it's 10 grand a month, 100 grand a month, or $1 million a month. All right, guys, rant's over. Appreciate the heck out of you. Deep breath. If you need anything, reach out to the team. We got you. Talk soon. See ya.
Hey, Cleaning Nation, if you dug the content you just got, we don't do any ads and I don't sell anything on this podcast, but if you would just subscribe, rate, and review, it would be huge, and I'd be so appreciative. Not only is it going to help me, but you'll help other owners of cleaning companies across the world work less, make more, and get profitable. So if you appreciate the value we give, again, subscribe, rate, and review. It would mean the world to me. I'd really appreciate it, and we sure appreciate your time and attention.